I'd studied that photo like scripture during winter. Phoebe Langston, blonde, blue-eyed, a face soft like spring rain on warm soil. That photo rode with me through blizzards and branding fires, through lonely nights staring at my empty porch. So when the stagecoach pulled into Dustwell and the door creaked open, I held my breath like a fool expecting a dream to step out. But what stepped out wasn't Phoebe. She was slight, with dark hair twisted tight and pinned, eyes shaped like raindrops, and sharper than broken glass. She didn't wear a bonnet or blue gingham. No bride would have chosen black linen in the desert sun. There was blood at the hem of her sleeve, and in her arms she clutched a plain wooden box like it held her soul. The driver tossed down a battered valise and muttered, "Wrong stop, I think." Papers were a mess. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at anyone until she saw me. Her gaze locked onto mine like we'd met before. She stepped forward. I looked back at the letter. Phoebe Langston, Bremen, Germany. The script was elegant, practiced. This woman, she was none of that. But she was bleeding, silent, and alone. "You're Miss Langston?" I asked, half hoping it was some mistake of the camera, the angle, the light. Maybe the photo was old. She didn't answer. She just tilted her head. Her lips were pressed tight, and her hand gripped that box so tight I thought it'd splinter. "Sir," the driver called again. "You talking her or not?" It felt like the whole town paused to see what I'd do. Even Samuel at the general store leaned halfway out his doorway, arms crossed, waiting. The woman finally spoke, her voice like dry paper. "You are Henrik Larson?" "No, I'm Cassidy Flynn." I was expecting someone else. I winced as the words left my mouth, but they were the truth. She flinched. As if I'd struck her, I felt something twist in my gut. I'd seen cattle, thieves with kinder eyes than hers. She looked like a dog that had been kicked too many times to beg anymore. Then she staggered. Blood spilled through her sleeve. I rushed forward just in time to catch her before she dropped the box. She gasped, trying to pull away, clutching the wooden case against her chest. "Easy," I said. "You're hurt." She shook her head, eyes wild. "No doctor," she whispered. "No sheriff. I'm not talking you to either." My hands hovered near her elbows. "But you need help." "I go to Pine Ridge," she said, voice trembling. "Please." I didn't know what waited in Pine Ridge, only that it was a day's ride through harsh country, and the nearest law was miles in the wrong direction. Maybe she'd made a mistake. Maybe we both had. But if I sent her back on that stage, wounded and alone, I'd be cursing myself till my dying day. "All right," I said. "You can ride with me. But we leave before sundown." She didn't thank me. She just nodded once, like that was all she had left in her. Yes, I helped her onto my wagon and laid the box beside her. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped into something far bigger than a bride gone missing. I tied down the last of the supplies in the wagon while sneaking glances at her. Leewi, as she called herself. She sat stiffly beneath my old canvas tarp, cradling that wooden box like it held the last piece of her life. The blood had soaked through the fabric at her shoulder now. I could see it every time the wind lifted the tarp, and each time I offered to look, she pulled away like I had reached for a blade instead. "Suit yourself," I muttered, tugging my canteen from its hook and handing it up. She took it with both hands, eyes darting left and right. Her fingers trembled. I could see now she wasn't just in pain. She was terrified. She wasn't running from something. She was running from someone that I'd seen that look before in a young Comanche girl we found wandering the edge of our ranch years ago. Eyes wide, lips tight, every movement braced for the next blow. I'd never forgotten that. Footsteps crunched behind me. I turned to see Samuel walking up from the store, wiping his hands on a flour sack. "You leaving so soon, Cassidy? That your bride?" "No," I said, glancing back toward the wagon. "Not even close." Samuel squinted at her. "She don't look well." "She isn't. But she won't let me take her to Doc Merritt." "Bleeding's coming from the arm?" "Yeah." Samuel stepped closer to the wagon. "Ma'am, I fought in the war. I've seen wounds like that fester if they ain't cleaned proper." She flinched at his voice. Her hand tightened on the box. She spooked bad. I said quietly, "She got reason?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I was starting to suspect the answer wasn't simple. Samuel reached slowly for the wagon, careful as if approaching a rattlesnake. "Ma'am, let me see. I ain't here to hurt you." She tensed again, then exhaled, sharp and shallow. Her head dipped forward, and she slowly peeled back the torn cloth. Samuel hissed between his teeth. "That's no scrape. That's a blade. Thin and curved. Like a saber, almost." A faint sound left her lips, something between a sob and a growl. She turned her face away, ashamed that I saw now that the wound wasn't fresh. It had been packed clumsily with cloth and sealed with resin. Or sap. She tried to care for it herself, while on the run. "You're lucky it didn't go deeper," Samuel muttered. "If it had hit the artery, I was lucky," she said quietly. Her first full sentence in English. Her voice was low but firm, shaped by an accent I couldn't place. She met my eyes then. I had to run. No time for doctor. No time for police. My mouth went dry. "Who cut you?" Her gaze dropped. "Man with badge." Samuel and I locked eyes. "Well, damn," he muttered. "You sure you still want to ride to Pine Ridge?" She nodded once. "I meet family there. They wait." Samuel stood, wiping blood off his hands. "You should keep it clean, redress it once a day. I'll fetch a kit for the ride." "Thanks," I said. When he left, she spoke again, quieter. "Now, you are a good man. I'm just trying to make sense of what happened." She shook her head. "No one else stop. You stop." I didn't know what to say to that. So I looked at the box. "What's in it?" I asked. "That thing more valuable than your life?" She touched the lid gently. "Yes." I didn't press that we rolled out by sunset, wagon creaking through the ruts. Samuel gave me an extra colt and a small kit with iodine and fresh cloth. "I don't like the way she's looking around," he whispered. "Keep that gun close." "I will." Leewi sat beside me in silence, the box wrapped in a scarf and held close. Her wound was bound again, cleaner now, but her hand still trembled. "You'll be safe?" I said quietly. She didn't answer, but I noticed that, for the first time since stepping off the stagecoach, her eyes finally closed, and she slept. We were maybe half a mile outside Dustwell when the riders showed up. At first, I figured they were ranch hands or surveyors. 3 men on horseback, riding fast and angled toward us like they meant business. I slowed the wagon and eased my hand toward the colt Samuel had loaned me. Leewi sat up straighter, the box held tight in her lap again. Her eyes flicked to the riders, then to me. She didn't speak, but I didn't need words to read what her face said. "They're here for me." The lead rider was a thick-set man with gray in his beard and a scar along his cheekbone. The badge on his chest caught the sun just enough to glint. "Sheriff Dalton," he called, voice deep and gravelly. "Out of Sutter County. Looking for a fugitive." I climbed down slow, not drawing my weapon yet. "You crossed 3 counties. For a fugitive, Sheriff?" "She's in your wagon," he said flatly. "Asian woman. Going by the name Leewi. She stole from a bank in Sutter and cut a deputy who tried to stop her." Behind him, the 2 deputies, one wiry, one young, shifted in their saddles, hands near their weapons but not drawing. My stomach tightened. "That's so?" I asked. "She's dangerous," Dalton said. "We got orders to retrieve her. Now, hand her over, and we'll be on our way." Leewi didn't say a word, but her hands were white-knuckled around the box now. And when I looked close, I saw it. Her arm shook with rage, not fear. Her jaw was clenched. She was staring at Dalton's side. That's when I saw it. The cut on his coat sleeve, fresh, jagged, bloodstained, just like her wound, but in reverse. "You say she cut your man?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "She did." "Well," I said slowly, "you're bleeding." Dalton's eyes flicked down to his own arm. "Accident. Horse threw me." Leewi's voice rose from the wagon, cracked and bitter. "He grabbed me. Said I carry gold." "No badge then." Dalton's horse shifted uneasily. One of the deputies glanced at him. I stepped a little closer to the wagon, between her and them. She says you never showed a badge until now. Dalton chuckled. She's a liar and a thief. 4 and 2. You really gonna take her word over mine? I didn't answer. I just looked at him. Dalton swung down from his horse. The dust curled around his boots as he approached. I'll be talking that box, too. No. Leewi whispered behind me. I raised my hand slowly. Sheriff, I don't think you got the authority to seize anything here without papers. I got my badge. Your badge don't travel 3 counties without writ or warrant. He took another step. Leewi stood. I go to Pine Ridge. My brother waits. I don't give a damn where your people wait. Dalton snapped, turning toward her. You're coming with. That was the moment I put my hand on my Colt, not drawing, not threatening, just reminding him that I had one. Back away, I said quietly. Dalton's eyes narrowed. You protecting her now? Not sure what she did or didn't do yet. But I know one thing. She's terrified of you. And I'm starting to think she's got a reason. The wind shifted. The younger deputy looked uneasy now. Dalton growled. You're making a mistake, Flynn. Wouldn't be the first time. He held my eyes a long moment. Then he backed off, spitting into the dirt. Fine. You'll both hang for it. They didn't ride off. Not yet. They lingered just far enough to watch us pull away, eyes full of fury and calculation. I didn't speak for a while. Neither did Leewi, but I felt her shift closer on the wagon seat. Not enough to touch, just close enough to let me know she understood, and she was still choosing to trust me. We waited until the riders disappeared over the ridge before I exhaled. My knuckles were still white from gripping the reins, and Leewi hadn't moved an inch beside me. The box sat on her lap like a weight, pressing her down into silence. You all right? I asked, voice low. She didn't nod. She didn't speak. But after a few long seconds, she unwrapped the scarf covering the wooden box. Her fingers worked slow and careful, like she was undoing something sacred. Then she opened the lid just enough for me to see inside. Gold. Not stolen bills or bloodied trinkets. Just clean, neatly wrapped stacks of coins. Old ones, Mexican pesos, Chinese taels, and a few American double eagles. Tied with red silk thread. That, I muttered, ain't from no bank robbery. She shook her head once. Dowry. I looked at her. For a marriage? She hesitated. It was for Henrik Larson. That's what papers say. But it was not real. The words hit me like cold water. All this time I thought I'd been stood up, thought some unlucky mail-order match had been rerouted. But now it seemed the Henrik Larson she was supposed to meet never existed. They forged it? I asked. She nodded. Man with badge. He made story. Said I carry stolen gold. But I carry my dowry. Family gold. For new land. New life. My throat tightened. You were never meant to marry? She looked down. No. I was sent to meet brother. But marriage story safer. Women with dowry often vanish. If papers say I have husband, fewer questions. I stared into the box again, letting it sink in. This wasn't just a woman fleeing a crime. This was a woman who'd been hunted, betrayed, and who had trusted a lie to survive. You told anyone else this? I asked. She shook her head. No one listened. No one believed. Only you. I ran a hand through my hair, glancing behind us toward where Sheriff Dalton had vanished. His story was unraveling fast. His badge had no weight in these parts, and if word spread that he tried to rob a foreign woman on false charges, it wouldn't just be his badge that got burned. I believe you, I said quietly. She looked up. Her lips parted, and for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. Not falling, but held back with every ounce of strength she had left. Please, she said. Just one word. But it carried a dozen more inside it. Please don't leave me. Please don't give me back. Please help me finish what I started. I nodded. We're right into Pine Ridge. And if he follows, he'll answer to me. When we reached a small stream near the foothills, I stopped to water the horse. Samuel had drawn me a crude map. Pine Ridge was maybe another 6 hours' ride, depending on terrain. We'd make it before dark if we pushed hard, but we weren't alone. Any more that I spotted them when I bent to scoop water, horse tracks in the dust. Not ours. Recent. I climbed back up into the wagon, jaw tight. He's following. Leewi didn't flinch. She reached into her box and pulled out a single tail wrapped in red silk. For you, she said. I'm not talking your gold. She shook her head. Not payment. Gift. For helping. For not asking too much. I took the coin gently, more for her peace than mine. I tucked it in my coat and gripped the reins tighter. Dalton thought he'd found an easy target. A foreign woman, with no friends, no voice, and no rights. But now she had me, and I was done letting cowards wear 10 stars. The sun was low behind the hills when I heard the hoofbeats. I snapped the reins, urging the mule faster. The wagon creaked, groaned, and rattled down the narrow path leading through Black Willow Pass. The canyon walls closed in on either side, steep and dry, casting long shadows over the road. Leewi sat beside me, gripping the box against her chest. Her eyes were fixed ahead, but I knew she heard it too. They were coming, and they weren't hiding it anymore. Then, behind us, wheels. Fast ones. A second stagecoach barreled around the bend, dust flying behind it like a devil's tail. It wasn't a mail run. No colors, no driver's horn, just a coach, charging through the pass with reckless speed. They're trying to cut us off, I shouted. Leewi didn't panic. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she untied the scarf around the box and, before I could stop her, tossed the box clean off the wagon. It landed in a patch of tall grass beside a dry creek. Then she ducked low, just as a rifle cracked and would splintered behind us. Damn it. I grabbed my Colt and fired 2 blind shots over my shoulder. Gunfire echoed against the canyon walls. The second coach skidded sideways behind us, kicking up dirt. Riders poured out from it. 6 men, not 3, rifles and pistols drawn. Leewi was already crawling to the back of the wagon. I tossed her Samuel's Colt and yelled, "If you can shoot, shoot." She didn't hesitate. Bang, bang, she fired. Low, driving one man behind a boulder. From the trees ahead, another rider appeared. Samuel, he was on horseback, rifle raised, shouting, "Down." We ducked as he fired once, twice, clean, deliberate shots. One man dropped to the ground screaming. Another scrambled backward toward the stage. "Cassidy," I thought, "you're in a war over a woman you met 2 days ago." And I'd do it again. I leapt from the wagon, using the wheel for cover. Samuel galloped past, throwing down a small pouch of ammo and another pistol. "They're not deputies. They're hired guns. How'd you find us?" I shouted. Riders went back through dust while bragging about a Chinese girl with gold. "Figured you'd be in trouble." More shots rang out. A bullet glanced off the metal rim of the wagon, nearly hitting my boot. Leewi crawled toward the creek, keeping her head low. I saw her hand close over the box. She was dragging it to cover. That was when I understood. The box wasn't just valuable. It was her story, her family's sacrifices, her dowry, her shield and sword in this land that didn't want her. She was willing to die for it. And she wasn't dying alone. I stood and fired twice toward the stagecoach. One shot struck the lead horse's harness, causing the team to buck and rear. Chaos broke out among the attackers. Samuel fired from the other side of the pass, pinning 2 men behind a pile of brush. I shouted to Leewi, "Get to the trees." She nodded and sprinted low, clutching the box. I covered her, firing shot after shot until my revolver clicked empty. The fight didn't last much longer. The ones who could still ride fled. One man was left moaning in the dust with a shattered knee. Dalton wasn't among them. I found him a few minutes later, bleeding from a graze across his temple, crawling behind a rock. He looked up at me, wild-eyed and snarling. "She's a liar. She's nothing. They're all thieves." I raised my pistol but didn't fire. "You're done," I said. Samuel rode up behind me, rifle slung over his shoulder. "We'll tie him up. Wire the real sheriff and Sutter. Let them sort it." Leewi approached slowly, box still in hand. Her clothes were torn, bloodied again, but she stood tall that I watched her look down at Dalton with eyes like flint. And for the first time, I saw not a scared woman running from something, but a force pushing forward, burning through every lie. In her way, she met my eyes, and I knew that I wasn't her protector anymore, that I was just someone lucky enough to stand beside her. We made camp in a shallow ravine, just beyond the ridge where the last of the gunfire faded. Samuel kept Dalton tied to a cottonwood, hands behind his back and mouth stuffed with a kerchief, less for silence than to keep him from spitting bile. Leewi sat by the fire, her arm redressed again with cleaner bandages. She hadn't let the box out of her sight, but now she was quiet, eyes reflecting the firelight, shoulders finally lowered, not relaxed, just no longer hunted. I sat across from her. You gonna tell me why a woman carrying a dowry box rides through the desert with men shooting at her? She didn't look at me at first, but then, slowly, she opened the box, not just to me this time, but fully, letting the firelight hit the gold. Under the coins, I noticed something else. Paper. Old, creased, but carefully wrapped. She unfolded one of the pages and handed it to me. It was a railroad ledger, stamped with names I recognized. Chin Brothers, Wong Sing, Li Shun, all names I remembered from rail camps. Except the pay columns were blank. The pages were notarized, signed, and never fulfilled. They worked, she said. Built your tracks. Never paid. 10 men from Guangdong. One was my father. I swallowed hard. My brother, Chen Wei, stayed behind to find proof. I was sent with the dowry, but also with this. So no one could say it was just talk. You weren't coming here to marry at all, I said slowly. The marriage papers were a smokescreen. She nodded. We knew men like Dalton watched for Chinese gold. If they knew what I carried, they'd take it, which they tried. She looked toward the shadows, where Dalton sat bound. He was supposed to escort me, protect me to Pine Ridge. Instead, he tore the papers and told his men I'd stolen gold. He thought no one would care what happened to me. I leaned back on my hands, exhaling hard. He might have been right. If you hadn't stepped off that stage in Dustwell instead of Denver. She smiled faintly, the first real smile I'd seen. The driver made a mistake. Or maybe fate did not. Maybe fate knew you needed an extra pair of hands, I said, and a storekeep with a good aim. Just then, a rustle of hooves echoed through the canyon. Samuel stood quickly, raising his rifle, but then paused. Out of the dark rode 4 men and a woman, all dressed in plain traveler's clothes. But their eyes searched sharp, and the lead rider was the spitting image of Leewi. If you hardened her features and gave her 10 more years of survival. He swung down from his horse and strode forward. Chen Wei? I asked. He nodded once, and then looked to Leewi. She rose to meet him, speaking rapidly in their native tongue. He listened, jaw tightening, hands clenched at his sides. Then he turned to me. You helped her? I did. He nodded once more. You risked much. That man, he gestured toward Dalton, attacked her in the night. Thought her soft. He will face trial. You'll take him to Sutter County? Samuel asked. Chen Wei's eyes narrowed. Yes, but first, we speak with Judge Holcomb. He took money from the railroad to bury our fathers. I have letters, names, witnesses. This, he lifted the ledger, will reopen the case. I looked at Leewi. This was never about gold. No, she said quietly. It was about ghosts. Samuel whistled. You folks mean business. Chen Wei extended a hand to me. You could ride with us to the trial. Bear witness. I glanced at Leewi. She didn't speak, but her gaze lingered on me like a hand not quite reaching, not quite pulling away. I'll ride, I said. Least I can do. As we packed up camp, Dalton still writhing and swearing under his gag, I walked beside her, brushing dust off my hat. So, I asked, what happens after justice? Leewi smiled at the firelight ahead. Then I decide what I want. Not what's written on a piece of paper. We rode into Pine Ridge just after sunrise, 6 of us surrounding a bruised and shackled Dalton, his mouth unbound but too bloody to do much spitting now. The town was quiet, but the moment folks saw who we were dragging behind our horses, the silence cracked. Judge Holcomb stood on the porch of the old meeting hall, coffee in hand, and watched us approach with a stillness I didn't trust. His gray coat was pressed and clean, but his eyes, when they landed on Chun Wei, darkened like a man seeing his past ride up to claim him. "You're early," Holcomb said. "We didn't want to give you time to hide," Chun Wei answered, dismounting with quiet fire. Dalton groaned from the saddle. "Judge, these people." Holcomb raised one hand. "Shut it." The sheriff of Pine Ridge stepped out behind him, rifle over his shoulder. Not Dalton's kind. This one had proper boots and eyes that paid attention. Chun Wei handed over the papers. 10 names. 10 bodies under the rail line near White Elk Ravine. Buried without coin, without witness. This man, he nodded at Dalton, was paid to escort my sister with the ledger. He tried to kill her. He stole her gold. Holcomb didn't take the papers. Just looked at them, then at Leewi, then back at Chun Wei. "You want me to put a sheriff on trial for robbing a foreign girl?" he asked slowly. Cassidy Flynn had had enough that I stepped forward, holding up the tale Leewi gave me, wrapped in red silk, the same kind her father once earned with sweat and steel and silence. "She's not just a foreign girl. She's the only reason this gold didn't vanish into the dirt like her father's bones." Holcomb's mouth twitched. "You speaking as a witness, Mr. Flynn?" "I'm speaking as the man who stood between her and a bullet." "You think it's a coincidence Dalton followed her off route with hired guns? You think it's a mistake she ended up in Dustwell instead of Denver?" He tried to erase her. "Same way you erased those names." Holcomb didn't speak for a long time, but the people in town were gathering now, storekeepers, ranch hands, even the Reverend's wife, and they were listening. Chun Wei opened the ledger, pointing at the signatures. "This ink, your name, is on it. Paid to release wages that never arrived. You think no one would come back after 20 years?" Holcomb looked down at the pages. Then he turned to the sheriff and gave a slow nod. "Take them both. Dalton's to be held in the depot. I'll ride to Sutter myself. This isn't Dustwell, and it damn sure ain't 1867 anymore." Dalton thrashed, but his words were weak now. The sheriff cuffed him and hauled him toward the holding cell. Holcomb looked at Chun Wei. "You'll get your trial." Chun Wei nodded once, eyes sharp. "We'll get more than that." Leewi stood off to the side, arms folded tightly over her middle. Her wound was still healing, but her spine was straight. When she saw Dalton disappear into the depot, she closed her eyes and breathed, not in relief, but in resolve that I stepped beside her. "It's over." She shook her head. "No, the gold will run out. But the truth doesn't. They'll try to bury it again. Then we'll keep digging," I said. She smiled at me. "You are stubborn. I've been called worse." That night, after the townsfolk cleared and the fire burned low, Chun Wei came to me. "You should know, she never planned to stay. Not here. Not anywhere." "I figured," I said, "but something changed. Maybe the way you looked at her like. She wasn't broken." I didn't say anything that he placed a hand on my shoulder. "She'll do what she has to. But if she stays, it'll be because she wants to." Leewi sat across the fire, staring at the flames, that box still beside her. But it was closed now. Locked. Not because she feared it would be taken, but because its story had been told, and she wasn't running anymore. The morning after Dalton was locked away and Holcomb rode out with the ledger, Pine Ridge looked different. Not quieter, just less hollow. Like the truth had rattled around long enough to shake something loose in the bones of the town that I sat. On the porch of the feed store, sipping bitter coffee and waiting, Leewi stepped out of the boarding house just after sunup. She wore a fresh blouse someone had gifted her, sleeves rolled high to avoid her healing arm. Her hair was down now, softer. But it wasn't the clothes or the braid that struck me. It was the way she walked. Not like she was being followed, like she was choosing her steps. She sat beside me on the wooden bench, holding that same box, though now the silk threads were gone. Just a wooden case, worn and scratched, in hers. I spoke with Chinwei, she said. They will take the papers to Sacramento, maybe even Washington. I nodded. They'll listen now. She smiled faintly. Maybe. We sat quiet for a while, watching the town wake up, mules braying, kids racing with tin pans, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Finally, I asked, "You still headed to Denver?" She didn't answer at first, just watched a redbird land on the railing in front of us. "No," she said. "Denver was a name. Like Henrik Larson. I don't need it anymore." "Pine Ridge, then?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I stay. Somewhere near you." My throat caught a little. "Leewi," I said gently. "I'm just a ranch hand who spends too many nights drinking coffee on porches. You had a mission. Now you've done it." She looked at me, steady, clear-eyed. "You didn't save me, Cassidy. You saw me. That's different." I felt heat rise in my chest, like I'd swallowed something sharp and sweet. "Still," I said, "you sure you want to build a future off a wrong stagecoach stop?" She laughed softly. "It wasn't wrong. Just not planned." Chunwei rode up not long after, his pack horse loaded with provisions. He dismounted and gave Leewi a long look. "Everything's in place," he said. "We leave tonight." Leewi stood slowly, but instead of following him, she turned to me. "Would you show me your land?" I blinked. "My land? You spoke of it before. Creek, horses, windmill. I want to see what you see." I swallowed hard. "I'd like that." Chinwei nodded once, respectful. "You'll find her stubborn," he said. "She'll fit right in." We walked toward the ridge together, not speaking much. No arrangement papers. No staged introductions. Just two people who had seen the worst in the world and found something good in it anyway. Maybe tomorrow she'd ride east with her brother Dot, or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe fate had a better instinct than any of us, because sometimes the right person comes with the wrong name, the wrong story, the wrong stop, and they still end up exactly where they're supposed to be.